Hi, I'm Bryan Beck. I'm the owner of Beckline, full-service backline company. We provide instrument rental for touring musicians, all the way from large concerts and arenas, all the way down to special events. Backline rental, for those who may not know, is all the instrumentation on stage touring musicians would need for their performances. Everything from guitar amps, drums, keyboards, organs, and even DJ gear. We're located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and do a multitude of events throughout the region all year long. We always have to provide the best top gear for those touring musicians. They need to know everything works and there's not an issue for their performance that evening. Here at Beckline, we also maintain a lot of our gear, but there are times we have to outsource to some professionals for where we get deep in the weeds, where we can't take care of it ourselves.
Bryan Beck, thanks for agreeing to play this role in the series honoring the late Don Polito. Bryan, how did you know Don Polito?
He became an important part of this business in maintaining some of our older pieces of gear that are still working, and people rely on these old instruments to be a part of their musical sounds.
So this is gear you were renting to other people?
Correct.
And it had to work?
Absolutely.
What's an example of what Don maintained?
Don always took care of our Hammond organ, Rhodes, our Whirlies, even some of our tube amplifiers if I got too deep in the weeds and not being able to figure out the problem there.
Would I be right, Bryan Beck, that you did not have a Rolodex full of names that you could call to solve problems?
You are correct in that. But I always, throughout the year, would have him come to the shop and maintain the gear to make sure that we didn't have those moments on show.
Bryan, did you get to know Don personally at all?
Yes, such a great guy. He's just a lot of fun to be around. He's very curious about my business and how it works, but he was also so knowledgeable in watching him take care of the instruments that we provide to other musicians.
This is something that several other people have said about Don Polito, that he was intellectually curious. Don trained in mid-century analog, even vacuum tube hardware, but when he was around more modern people, instead of resenting it, he was curious.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he would see a lot of the newer gear and newer keyboards that we provide and be curious about them and ask what's kind of trending in the industry. But I would always have more questions about the older gear that I don't know how to understand myself. I'd been to Phil's TV a few times with different pieces and walked into that wonderful time warp into back to old tube radios and tube TVs, and such a neat place. I remember specifically this one time I took a Rhodes, and I may have been the Rhodes sitting behind me, and I had to lift it up the cement steps myself out front and get it in the building, and I was having an issue with the amplifier, and we got it set up in there, and he he played it for a minute, and then he took a screwdriver, whacked the side of it a couple times, and was like, "No, I know exactly what the problem is." And then he pulled the amplifier out and it had the problem fixed in, honestly, 15 minutes. When he saw some of the other items, I had been referred to him just as the Hammond guy, but then when he saw that I had Whirlies and Rhodes, and he would talk to me about those as well, and then I realized I could use him for those pieces as well.
Bryan, I know so little of the backline equipment rental world, but would I be right as a novice that when you send gear out and it doesn't work, client is in a jam, Bryan Beck's equipment has not worked, am I right that you have skin in that game?
Oh, absolutely. Our whole goal is, we can't be holding up the show because of our equipment's at fault. People pay money to go see a show and for it to happen on time. So we need to make sure that we're sending stuff that's in top working order, and we send backups along with us just in case there are surprises. But we don't ever want to be a part of the problem. We want to be the guys hiding in the background. And that's exactly why Don Polito was such an asset to Beckline in making sure that all these vintage pieces of gear stayed in tip-top shape and in that every player that came into town was always like, wow, this is the best organ we've played in a while, and your stuff is so great. So Don has been amazing at helping us achieve our goal as a business.
Bryan, did you ever see Don play, hear Don play?
Oh yes, yeah, a bunch of times. Every time he would come to the shop to do our maintenance on our B3 and stuff, that was kind of what you would get as a bonus in the tune-up, was getting to watch him play for a while.
My wife, Deanna, not a musician, but she watched with interest the videos of Don playing that are part of this series, and she was very struck by the level that his heart was involved in the performance, by the joy he got in playing. Your thoughts?
You could tell even when he was just even on a maintenance call, coming here to, make some money on a maintenance call, that even that time in going through a tune-up and him getting to play, you could sense the enjoyment of him just being there playing the instrument. And even, looking back at me and like, oh, and then there's this style. And then he'd hurry up and change the drawbars and then, do something for a minute. And then he was like, oh, but then back in this day, there's this guy. And honestly, half the time I had no idea who these people he was talking about or shouting out the styles of, but it was so neat to hear just the different voicings he would get on the Hammond and the different styles. It was just always blessed to have witnessed it.
What do you miss most about Don Polito?
Honestly, those times coming and working on the B3 and playing. It's his conversation was always fun, and watching his passion and working on the B3 always made me really curious as well, how it all works, and seeing his joy of music.